As fans of the NBA, we are living in a truly blessed time, with the totality of talent spread across the entire league. This was made very apparent after watching last year's playoffs, but especially in the Western Conference, where we saw a young core of the OKC Thunder finish as the first seed in the West, just 1 year removed from being below a 500 team and missing out on the playoffs completely. The Minnesota Timberwolves also emerged as somewhat as an unsuspecting heavy hitter, mostly thanks to the crazy ascension of Anthony Edwards. Going into this season under those conditions, it's almost expected that we're destined to see the Boston Celtics go up against either the Dallas Mavericks, Timberwolves, or the Thunder. But given what we saw from the Miami Heat and their underdog playoff run just 2 seasons ago, most fans shouldn't be so certain of the finals matchups before the season even starts. And in this video, we're going to go over 6 NBA teams you should definitely not count out. When you think about NBA teams that have flown under the radar recently, the Memphis Grizzlies are probably one of the first to come to mind. It's crazy to think that just a couple years ago, they were one of the most exciting young teams in the league. With Ja Morant leading the charge, they looked to be a team ready to make a serious run in the West. But fast forward to last season, and it's like the Grizzlies fell off the map entirely. And to be fair to the fans, it's not like the franchise is given much reason to pay attention after finishing with a disappointing 27-55 record. So what happened? Well, most of the blame can be put on the brutal, injury-riddled season that the Grizzlies underwent. The perfect example of their nightmare season came in their final game, where they were missing a jaw-dropping 13 players, leaving only 2 players from the original 15-man roster available, while the other 6 guys that were suiting up had been with the team for less than 5 months. To put things into perspective, the Grizzlies used a record-breaking 33 different players over the course of the season, which led to 51 different starting lineups. That's basically like swapping your starting 5 every other game, making it nearly impossible for the team to build any kind of chemistry or consistency. Last season for the Grizzlies wasn't just bad, it felt cursed. You could see it early on, but the most telling sign was the drama surrounding Ja Morant. After serving a 25-game suspension, Ja made his much-anticipated return in mid-December, and fans were ready for a turnaround. Morant wasted no time reminding everyone why he's the franchise cornerstone, in his first game back dropping 34, 6, and 8. Oh yeah, and capped that night off by hitting the game-winning buzzer beater. For a brief moment, it had seemed like the Grizzlies might finally start turning things around. Morant's return sparked a 4-game winning streak, with him putting up some crazy numbers, averaging 29, 5, and 9. He was putting on a clinic, showing everyone how important he was to this team's success. But because nothing went right for Memphis last year, things quickly went south again. In the 5th game after his return, Morant came down with an illness and had to sit out against the Nuggets. Without their starting point guard, the Grizzlies couldn't keep up, and lost in pretty spectacular fashion. And if that wasn't bad enough, just as Ja Morant started finding his rhythm again, the curse struck once more. 5 games after his return from illness, Morant suffered a freak shoulder injury against the Lakers. This wasn't just another setback. His injury was season-ending, and with it, any hopes the Grizzlies had of salvaging their 2023-24 campaign went out the window. It was a tough pill to swallow, especially since the team had started to look like themselves again in a brief 9-game stint. During those games, Memphis went 6 for 3, which doesn't sound like much, but it was a huge improvement compared to how they looked without him. And it wasn't even like Ja Morant was playing with a full healthy roster during that time either. Marcus Smart, who was brought in to add some veteran leadership and grit to the team, only played 1 single game alongside Ja that season. The team was still riddled with injuries, yet Morant's presence alone made them significantly more competitive. His impact is undeniable. It's not just the fact that he's a dynamic scorer or an explosive playmaker, it's that the entire offense flows better when Ja is on the floor. He is the engine that makes this team go, and without him they struggled to find any real identity. And then there's Desmond Bane, a player who was thrusted into the spotlight last season as the Grizzlies try to navigate their endless injuries. Don't get me wrong, Bane is a very good player, but last year kinda highlighted that he's not quite ready to be the #1 option for the team. When Morant was out, Bane was often asked to carry the offensive load, and while he had some strong performances, it became clear that he thrives as more of a complementary role. However, at 26, Bane should just be entering his prime, and the experience that he did gain last year as the primary option should be enough to benefit him in the long run. He's gotten a taste of what it's like to be the guy, and that experience should only help him once he shifts back to his natural role alongside a healthy Ja Morant. Jaren Jackson Jr., of course, is a force on the defensive end. He's the reigning Defensive Player of the Year after all, but offensively, he doesn't have the skill set to carry a team by himself either. He's more of a second or third option, someone who can dominate defensively while contributing on offense. Last year made it clear that as talented as Bane and Triple J are, neither of them is equipped to shoulder the burden of running the offense without Morant. They need their floor general back to help unlock their full potential. So what's next for the Grizzlies? Well, the good news is that despite all the chaos, the team is young and full of potential. Ja Morant is only 25 and still has his best years ahead of him. If he can stay healthy and avoid any further suspension, there's no reason why the Grizzlies can't bounce back and return to being one of the most exciting teams in the league. The key is keeping their core players on the floor. Last season was a mess, largely because they couldn't stay healthy, as mentioned. If the Grizzlies can get through a season without the injury bug biting them at every turn, they have the talent to compete. Bane is about to enter his prime, and the lessons he learned last season should only help him grow. Triple J will continue to be a defensive anchor, especially at home, where he just seems to have better stats for whatever reason, and Smart's presence should only provide some much-needed veteran leadership. But everything hinges on Ja Morant. His return to full health and consistent availability could be the difference between another frustrating season and the Grizzlies reestablishing themselves as a legitimate contender in the Western Conference. At the end of the day, last season was a tough one for the Grizzlies, but with a full returning squad, this team does have the potential to snag one of those playoff positions once again. However, one of the knocks against the team is the loss of Steven Adams and all of those offensive rebounds that he brought to the team. It'll be ideal if Zach Edey can step in early to fill his shoes, as he should be NBA ready after the 4 years of college, but if not, then that may be an area where the franchise can work on bolstering, as this team's timeline doesn't really feel like it has much room to wait for development. Moving on from Ja Morant and the Grizzlies to another 2019 draft standout, Zion Williamson and his New Orleans Pelicans. Like Memphis, New Orleans had been plagued with injuries, but just on a much smaller scale. Surprisingly, Zion was the healthiest of their stars last season, which is a big deal considering his past. He finally played 70 games for the very first time in his career, a huge milestone given his injury history. Statistically, it wasn't his best season yet, but he still showed flashes of the potential everyone's been waiting to see since he was the #1 overall pick. Still, despite Zion's good health, the Pelicans couldn't escape the injury bug. Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum missed chunks of the season, and that inconsistency dropped them into a play-in tournament spot. For Zion though, he would have a standout performance in what would technically be his first postseason game, dropping 40 and 11. It was a glimpse of just how dominant he can be when healthy. But then came a calf sprain late in the fourth quarter. That injury stopped the team's entire momentum, and the Pelicans lost. They did manage to beat the Kings, but up next was the top-seeded Thunder. And without Zion, there was little hope for a win. Even though games 1 and 4 were close, OKC swept them. After this sweep, you can't help but wonder how things might have gone if Zion had stayed healthy though. Based on his play-in showing, the Pelicans might have stolen a couple of those games against the Heat, namely that game 1 and 4. While they probably wouldn't have won the series, just getting a few wins against the top team in the West could have been huge for their confidence and motivating moving forward. But even still, it doesn't seem like the front office is just standing by. They brought in DeJounte Murray, which should add a lot of help. Murray brings the Pelicans another scorer and playmaker, but more importantly, he understands the importance of defense, something that this team needs if they want to compete, as they have done a great job of keeping both ends of the floor very balanced. Then we've got an off-season milestone that's almost become as regular as the Ben Simmons jump shot videos, these skinny Zion pictures. This year, however, does feel a bit different. We've all heard the jokes about Zion's diet, like his love for soda. A love that's so deep that he apparently has empty bottles of it just laying all over his washroom, of all places. And the open secret that is how his conditioning impacts his ability to stay healthy. But now there's some optimism that he actually might be taking his fitness level seriously for the very first time in his career. If he can stay in shape, he might be able to finally avoid those injuries that have slowed him down. This is a crucial point in Zion's career. He's only 24, and his potential is sky high, but it's time for him to prove he can stay healthy and on the court. If Zion can stay healthy, the Pelicans roster is the best he's ever had around him. Brandon Ingram is an all-star caliber scorer. CJ McCollum is a proven leader, and adding Murray gives them a well-rounded, dangerous squad. problem, as always, is health. If the Pelicans can keep their core intact, they've got the talent to make a real run in the West. As we mentioned, they have a good starting lineup, and if they stay healthy, they could surprise a lot of teams. This upcoming season feels like it could be make or break for the Pelicans. The front office has made moves, and now it's on Zion to take the next step. If he can keep his conditioning in check and stay injury-free, the Pelicans could finally live up to the potential that's been brewing ever since they drafted him. Fans have been waiting for this team's breakout, and with the roster they have now, the 2024-25 season could be the one where it all clicks. Now moving on to the Eastern Conference, there's a team that's been slowly developing with somewhat of a similar model to the Thunder, deciding to build in-house and through the draft. But unlike the Thunder, this franchise hasn't gotten the same respect that it deserves. And that franchise would of course be the Orlando Magic. The team officially called it quits on Vucevic and Aaron Gordon, and with that came a full rebuild, honestly making the right decision at the time, getting top tier value through their trades. The best value ended up coming from their deal with the Bulls, which saw Vooch getting sent down to Chicago, and for Orlando, it ultimately added another pick in their 2021 draft, which against the odds turned out to be another lottery pick for the franchise, which was a massive opportunity considering how highly rated this draft class was. The consensus upper tier of the draft was the top 5 prospects: Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes, Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, and Jalen Suggs. But unfortunately for the Magic, they had the 5th pick, and therefore would pretty much be left with whatever of these 5 would be left. And that turned out to be Jalen Suggs. Obviously, they could have chosen another player, like possibly Josh Giddey. And given his first 2 years in the league compared to Giddey, I'm sure fans were wishing that they had done that. But after this most recent season, any of those fans definitely would have changed their minds. Suggs has really popped off as a developing high-level 3-and-D player. And as for Josh Giddey, the only development he showed over the season is his slow development into the Giddler. So with hindsight, this move can be a real testament to the talent of the Magic scouting department, which is proven again when you look at the player they took 3 picks later. Since Franz Wagner's first couple of games in the league, you could already see the diverse role that he would be able to fill for this franchise. And since those early weeks, the proof of that hasn't faded whatsoever. However, adding these 2 additions didn't sway the rebuild plans at all with the franchise, finishing with the 2nd worst record in the entire league following Jalen Suggs and Franz's rookie seasons, which gave the franchise very good odds for the promising consensus 1st overall pick in Paolo Banchero. Once again, the Magic ended up lucking into the lottery and ended up getting the 1st overall pick and Paolo. All of these main pieces have been slowly developing alongside players like Cole Anthony, who's shown the potential to be amongst the league's top 6-mans, and Jonathan Isaac, who, when healthy, has consistently been amongst the league's top defenders, being one of the few players that's actually been able to kind of shut down Victor Wembanyama, with Wemby failing to reach any of his career offensive averages while going up against Isaac and the Magic. This development together has started to actually see results, with the team finishing as the 5th seed in the East this year and ended up facing off in probably the most intense first-round series in the league. However, despite an underdog of a team breaking out as a top contender in the East, being led by Paolo Banchero, who's only in his 2nd season by the way, managing to average 23, 7, and 5 while also getting his first All-Star selection, making for the perfect team and the perfect star for the country to rally around. Despite all of this, little national media attention was given to the Magic. And so that's why the team's development and slight disrespect are definitely both reasons why the Orlando Magic have landed on this list.
One team that might catch everyone by surprise next season is the Houston Rockets. After enduring a difficult stretch following James Harden's departure, the Rockets are finally starting to turn a corner. Last season, they finished with a 41-41 record, a massive step up from the previous years when they were scraping the bottom of the Western Conference. Now, with a blend of young talent and veteran leadership, they are poised to make an even bigger splash. A major factor in the Rockets' turnaround has been the emergence of Alperen Şengün. The young center had shown flashes of brilliance in his first 2 seasons, but wasn't given the opportunity to take on a starting role. Last year, with a new coach willing to put faith in him, Şengün flourished. He quickly demonstrated that he's much more than just a traditional big man, drawing frequent comparisons to Nikola Jokic for his versatility, high basketball IQ, and ability to facilitate offense from the post. While the Jokic comparison can sometimes feel overused, it's hard to ignore when you see Şengün comfortably directing traffic and dishing out assists at the center position. His averages of 21 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1 steal per game are a testament to his growth, and that's as a third-year player. Unfortunately, his season was cut short by a grade 3 ankle sprain. But make no mistake, Şengün is on the verge of stardom, and his continued development could be the catalyst for the Rockets to become a playoff team. His ability to make everyone around him better, whether that's through passing or his growing dominance in the paint, could be what sets the Rockets apart from other young teams in the West. But the Rockets' potential doesn't end with Şengün. The team made very savvy moves by bringing in veteran leadership in the form of Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. VanVleet, who was instrumental in the Toronto Raptors 2019 championship run, brings a calming, steadying presence to a young team that previously struggled with consistency. Known as Steady Freddy, his ability to make clutch plays, organize the offense, and provide a stabilizing force in pressure-packed moments will be invaluable to Houston's inexperienced roster. His leadership alone can raise the floor for this team, and his championship pedigree could help mold the young core into playoff caliber players. Dillon Brooks, despite his controversial reputation, brings a gritty, hard-nosed edge that every single team needs. Sure, Dillon Brooks has been criticized for his antics, particularly his trash-talking with opposing stars, but his defense is undeniable. His ability to pester elite scorers night in and night out can take the Rockets' defense to another level. While he may be polarizing, there's no denying that teams tend to overperform when he's on the roster. His experience and relentless energy on the defensive end could help set a defensive tone for a young Rocket squad that will need to be tough on both ends of the floor to compete in the stacked West. Perhaps the most intriguing piece of the puzzle is Jalen Green. The former number 2 overall pick has had an up and down start to his NBA career. On one hand, Green has shown flashes of brilliance. He's a gifted scorer, incredibly athletic, and can create his own shot at will. On the other hand, his efficiency has been a concern, and his decision-making in key moments remains a work in progress. If Green can take that next step and become a more consistent and efficient scorer, it would elevate the Rockets to another level. Green's development is crucial. If he can become the offensive star the Rockets need, alongside Şengün and the other young players, this team could be far more than just a playoff hopeful. It could be a legitimate contender in the near future. And let's not forget about Jabari Smith Jr. Known for his defensive prowess and ability to stretch the floor, Smith could be the perfect complement to players like Green and Şengün. His ability to guard multiple positions, hit outside shots, and play off the ball makes him an ideal piece in Houston's system. If Smith can build on his promising start and develop into a two-way force, he'll be another key ingredient in the Rockets' formula for success. As if that weren't enough, guys like Amen Thompson, the number 4 pick in this year's draft, bring even more intrigue to this already loaded roster. Thompson is an electrifying guard with elite athleticism and a high motor. His defensive potential is sky high, and his ability to push the pace could unlock new dimensions for Houston's offense. Pairing him with a player like Jalen Green could form one of the most dynamic young backcourts in the entire league. So what's the ceiling for this team? With a roster packed full of promising talent, key veterans providing guidance, and a coach willing to put trust in his young stars, Houston could be on the verge of something special. If Jalen Green figures it out, Şengün continues his rapid development, and players like Jabari Smith Jr. and Amen Thompson live up to their potential, the Rockets won't just be a surprise playoff team, they could be a serious threat in the Western Conference for years to come. Another team to keep an eye on this season is the San Antonio Spurs, and they might surprise you with a push towards a playoff spot. I know what you're thinking. Outside of Victor Wembanyama, this team has been a disaster, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong. Ever since Kawhi Leonard left, the Spurs have endured one of the roughest stretches in franchise history, far removed from the glory days of Tim Duncan and Tony Parker. But that era of futility may be nearing its end, all thanks to the arrival of Victor Wembanyama, a player widely seen as a generational talent. The 7'4" French phenom has captivated the basketball world with his unique combination of size, skill, and versatility. While last season had its up and downs as Wembanyama adjusted to the NBA, there were plenty of moments that showed exactly why the Spurs selected him with the #1 overall pick. His potential to revolutionize the game, especially for big men, is evident in the way he plays. Wembanyama is not your typical center. He moves like a guard, can shoot from deep, and has a defensive presence that immediately impacts the game. His fluidity and skill set have drawn comparisons to players like Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo, but he truly stands in a class of his own. By the end of the season, he was putting up some impressive performances and playing well beyond his years, giving fans a glimpse of what the future holds. While Wembanyama has put up some freak stats, Wembanyama's influence on this team goes well beyond the stat sheet. Like LeBron James with the early Cavaliers team, Wembanyama has the potential to lift a relatively underwhelming roster to a playoff berth almost on his own. His mere presence on the floor alters how teams game plan against the Spurs, forcing defenses to adjust to his unique skill set and size. And while the Spurs don't have the deepest roster in the league, the development of players around Wemby could accelerate with such a rare talent leading the charge. One of the key factors in the Spurs' potential resurgence will be how the supporting cast develops around Wembanyama. Possibly the biggest reason for excitement is the recent arrival of Chris Paul. Paul has a history of taking young, inexperienced teams and making them competitive. When he joined a rebuilding Oklahoma City Thunder team after the Westbrook era, few expected them to make the playoffs, yet Paul willed that team to a surprising postseason appearance. His impact on the Spurs could be similarly transformative. One of the most exciting aspects of Paul's presence will be his mentorship for Wembanyama. Paul's pick-and-roll mastery combined with Wembanyama's length and skill set could create one of the most dangerous offensive combinations in the league. Expect plenty of lobs, crafty passes, and high IQ plays between the two. Paul's influence won't just be felt with Wembanyama though. He'll also play a critical role in guiding rookie guard Stephon Castle, the 4th pick in this year's draft. Castle, a promising young guard, will greatly benefit from having a Hall of Fame point guard like Paul showing him the ropes. Castle has a lot of raw talent, and learning the intricacies of running an NBA offense from a player like Paul could definitely fast-track his development. This mentorship could also elevate Castle's understanding of how to play alongside a unique talent like Wemby, setting up the Spurs for long-term success. While it's too early to expect a deep playoff run from the Spurs, their potential is undeniable. If Wembanyama continues to develop and the Spurs' young core steps up, a playoff berth isn't out of the question. With Paul guiding the offense and mentoring the younger players, San Antonio could make significant strides this season, especially if Wembanyama begins to assert his dominance on a consistent basis. Speaking of franchises in shambles after Kawhi left, the Raptors are another team we may see exceed expectations. The team has obviously seen better days since Kawhi left, with the last few seasons especially being very underwhelming. The team is going in a good direction though, beginning with young star Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes is not just the future of the Toronto Raptors, he's the heartbeat of a team that's quietly rebuilding while trying to maintain competitiveness. Drafted 4th overall in 2021, Scottie Barnes is already an elite two-way player. He's a 6'9" forward with the size, wingspan, and IQ to dominate on both ends of the court. Barnes is the kind of player who thrives in Masai Ujiri's vision of positionless basketball. As the Raptors transition to a more fluid and modern system, Scottie Barnes is the glue holding it together. His ability to push the pace in transition, set up teammates, and defend at an elite level make him extremely valuable. What sets Barnes apart is his adaptability and basketball IQ. During his rookie season, Barnes showcased his ability to impact the game on both ends of the floor. Defensively, he can switch onto guards and bigs alike, using his length and agility to disrupt passing lanes and contest shots. Offensively, he's a Swiss Army knife. His playmaking, ball handling, and ability to finish at the rim complement a developing mid-range jumper. While he's not a pure scorer, Barnes' impact goes well beyond the box score. He's unselfish, constantly looking to make the right play and involving his teammates, a rare quality in a young player. If his shooting from beyond the arc improves and he becomes a more assertive scorer, Barnes has the ceiling of an all-NBA player. For the Raptors, Barnes' growth signals a new era, but the team is far more than just Scottie Barnes. The acquisition of RJ Barrett was a pivotal moment for the Raptors. Barrett, a former 3rd overall pick with the New York Knicks, has matured into a well-rounded scorer and playmaker. After arriving in Toronto, he quickly found his groove, providing the Raptors with a consistent offensive weapon. His ability to create his own shot and drive to the basket has made him a vital addition to the team. He gives the Raptors another wing who can create offense in a pinch. This allows Scottie to play much more freely without always shouldering the scoring burden, and opens the floor for Barnes to continue growing as a playmaker while Barrett handles the scoring load on some nights. With Barrett's work ethic and commitment to improving his game, he could be the perfect complement to Barnes' versatility. In addition to Barrett, the Raptors added Emmanuel Quickley, a rising guard who was a key contributor with the New York Knicks. Quickley's quickness, outside shooting, and defensive tenacity bring a different dimension to the Raptors' backcourt. His ability to play on or off the ball gives head coach Darko Rajakovic flexibility with lineups. Since Scottie and Barrett feel comfortable doing a little bit of playmaking, Quickley can slot in as a spot-up shooter, a playmaker himself, or he can even run the second unit sometimes if the Raptors want to get crafty with lineups. None of this comes together without Masai Ujiri, the Raptors' president of basketball operations and one of the NBA's top executives. Ujiri has consistently shown a willingness to make bold moves, whether that's trading for Kawhi Leonard and winning a championship or helping reshape the roster with smart acquisitions. Ujiri's ability to identify undervalued players and pull off strategic trades like the one for RJ Barrett is looking to keep the Raptors competitive, even during what many expected to be a pure rebuilding phase. Expect some wildcard moves out of Ujiri at any moment to only increase this team's level. Don't expect the Raptors to win any championships in the next few years, but given that the East seems wide open, don't rule out the Raptors sneaking into the playoffs for this upcoming season. Well, there we have it for the list. Did we miss your favorite team, or do you think we missed a good one? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe so you can see our future videos when we release them. Thanks for watching.